Since 1983, FAME has helped business and education work for Maine. Contact the authority, the Finance Authority of Maine.
Welcome. This is our Afterthought segment where we keep our guests around from our broadcast show for a little extra conversation and hopefully even more candid discussion of the issues. Today we're talking about economic development strategies and what kind of tools are available to us in Maine. And we have some experts with us here today. Matt Jacobson, CEO of Maine & Company. Charlie Spies, Managing Director of CEI Capital Management. Michael Obey, President of Eastern Maine Development Corporation. And Bob Thompson, Executive Director of Androscoggin Valley Council of Governments. And I was just thinking, if we added up all the years you guys have, what we're looking at, about a couple, 300 years?
Oh.
No, I mean
dog years.
Are you thinking about quality or quantity?
All right, where did we leave off? I think I do want to talk one more thing about that. It's a strange balance. Obviously, last November, I think there was a message that was heard loud and clear. Okay, let's cut government, or not just that, but let's get serious about really cutting spending, being very serious about it, and focused. But I didn't necessarily hear the same ringing out about investment. How do we invest our way? How do we do that? I mean, what are you thinking about that? Because we talked about education, we talked about R&D, and right now all we got going is really we do have R&D at the university level. We have MTI some, but not a lot other than that.
We are working on I manage this federal New Markets Tax Credit program, which encourages private sector investment in businesses, and I think I've worked with all of you on this program. Mm-hmm. We've been able to bring in about $500 million in investments into Maine that are tied to this program. Mm-hmm. We are also trying it right now to get a state-level New Markets Tax Credit where it would attract private investors into businesses that they believe are promising. So I think efforts like that will help. And as far as I understand, and currently in the legislature, there is some discussion about some funding going to economic development incentives. And to me, that's a good use of that to enhance investment opportunities.
All right, let's go from there. Then what's an effective incentive? What incentivizes
incentives,
people to come or businesses to expand?
Look, incentives are what, up till about 2 years ago, incentives are what came in at the end of the deal to kind of break the tie. An incentive program won't make a good deal out of a bad one. It just breaks the ties. What's happened in the last really year to 18 months is about 15 states have become extraordinarily aggressive with what they call a forgivable loan program. Certainly they'll pay for all the training. We don't do that.
But aren't they in the same fiscal mess we are?
No, they're clearly not. And they've made a decision to fund this versus some other things that we might. Yeah. So when you look at the kinds of forgivable loans, $100 million forgivable loan over 5 years, if you hire who you said you're going to hire, why then you don't have to pay the money back. That's the competition. So when you ask me what's a good incentive, it depends on what the market is. Right now the market is pretty rich, and it depends on what you're trying to attract. If you want GE or Caterpillar or one of these big companies, then you got to play in that game. If Mike or Bob can tell me that what our niche is X and it's this kind of company, well then we can target that. Maybe that's the next level down, and we don't have to offer such a rich incentive. But if we're just going to try to be everybody's place, well, we're not going to win.
I think the challenge we have as we look at the incentives is, I think for the most part, we get into that game very late as a state. We always have. It's what's happened there, what's happened here, we adopt it. What we're hearing from companies now, both in terms of retention and attraction, is the workforce development piece. I mean, our 16 to 44 year-old out-migration is significant. Most of us have gray hair. We don't produce children in this state. We got to retain those numbers in that demographic group, and therein lies, I think, the incentive of how do we keep them here, or how do we attract them here in such a way that then that's a capacity issue that you can go out and sell and say, right, we've got this youth trained in these skill sets or whatever, but we got to keep them here first, and that continues to be a challenge.
Is everything. It's everything.
The only thing I would add to that is when we talked about incentives in the past, the incentives that we had at our pleasure to work with were merely trying to offset some of the negatives. Right. And we talked earlier about the administration's goals, that some of those incentives will be less important and we can concentrate our efforts elsewhere if they can take care of some of the underlying issues.
You can drive down some of those other costs of doing business.
Right. Predictability in the health care cost and lowering it, the highest marginal tax rate, and a few of the other things that any of the businesses will tell you. And I'm sure you've run into it, Matt. I've got to bring my key personnel. Now, what's the impact of having them under your state tax structure?
Right.
And they take a pay cut.
And that's the easy one, right? the top marginal income tax rates?
Corporate income, personal income, those are the two.
Those are easy.
When I hear about taxes, those are the two I hear about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think controlling healthcare costs, good luck, everybody. I mean,
Well, that's not true.
That's not.
We are an
higher.
outlier.
We're
We are an
outlier.
outlier in the country.
Yeah.
Now, certainly they're going up in the country, but let's just get to the national average. We are significantly above the
our
national
state
average.
monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, put on the license plate.
We're striving for the state average, national average.
With a national average
Better
state.
say mediocrity. No.
Exactly.
Well, there was a movement at one time, remember, we talked about that. It was called Strive for 25. So if we
Yeah.
can get at least all those 40s off the chart, at
Right.
least get to 25, my God, we'll be all right. We can sell the rest of it.
Well, let's aspire to be number one. And
Right.
We'll, see
We'll,
what
we'll
happens.
take 25
Yeah.
from there. Okay. I'm going to talk about business attraction, I guess, too, because I know that's what your job is, and you all are, too. Everybody's involved in that at some level. Is there an opportunity now with the economy the way it is, and then also, do we have any competitive advantages that we can really use for business attraction? And you be quiet for a while, so because that's what you do. But I want these guys who are working, and from your level in particular, right at the regional level.
Actually, one of the things that we're seeing, and I'll put it in the loose words of quality of place, we
Yeah.
are seeing a lot of entrepreneurial development, or what I might call execs from away that still want to work. And they're settling. The Bethel region, and Robin Zinchuk up there talks about that a lot. She can point to dozens of people that fell in love with the place, and they went sort of into semi-retirement, and now they're growing their own small businesses. So we've got a lot of small activity, and that's not going to replace a lot of the issues that we have, but you can't ignore it. Every job, every opportunity, every educated person that wants to start something up, that adds to the base.
Yeah, we're looking in our region in terms of how do you grow the opportunity, particularly with the three-ring binder coming on.
Yep.
Right.
The three-ring binder with GWI and the university is going to reposition at least our section of Maine in a different place competitively. And that's going to be an advantage for a while. And we ought to be using that to attract small entrepreneurs, the half a dozen, the professional engineering firm or the professional architectural firm that can grow to 40 or 50 high-quality jobs, good-paying jobs, be part of the community. Those are the kinds of things we could be getting if we have that in place. And so that's what we're focusing on right now is a possible opportunity. But that's a short window because the next piece of technology will be out sooner than we know it.
Right.
If I could just add to that on kind of a micro scale relative to what we talked about earlier about regional assets. The Naval Air Station in Brunswick, I mean, there's an example of a devastating kind of perfect storm. They're shutting down the Naval Air Station, the capital markets and the real estate markets went down, 5,000 jobs removed, over 5,000. But there are some fantastic physical assets there. And I would give the Redevelopment Authority and the executive director there, Steve Levesque, credit for pushing that forward. And I know they're working with Main & Company as well. And there are at least two companies that I know of right now that are actively seeking to locate new facilities on that base. But I would agree with what Mike said earlier. There's that window. It's time to act now. You don't want that to look like it's been out there for 10 years with nothing happening. You got to act now.
All right, but that also still gets back to an investment. We talked about investment in R&D and how do we kind of, in education. What about marketing? Do we need to market to the state? And how do we spend money for that?
We don't.
How do you
and
do it
we
wisely?
should. I mean, we don't and we should. I wrote an article in the Bangor Daily a few months back about this very notion about branding Maine and comparing our effort to what Apple does. And they sort of, people say, well, we have different customers, we couldn't possibly. Well, they serve the 16-year-old kid that's downloading Justin Bieber all the way to the multi-billion-dollar company that's trying to buy, high-powered Macs for design work. And everybody in between gets the same treatment in terms of their customer service, their brand experience, and all that stuff. These two gentlemen represent vastly different regions with vastly different opportunity in each one, but yet when we go outside of Maine to brand that, they might get touched by several different ways and flavors and not terribly effective. So I think, yes, we need to have a sales and marketing strategy that builds on what the local folks are willing to support and want, and we don't do that today.
For those of us that do some traveling, Maine has a brand.
Yes.
I can't tell you any place where you introduce yourself and you say, I'm from Maine. Somebody's got a story that I wanted to be there, I was there, I want to get back, but then we have to deliver.
Right.
And we have not
Yeah,
capitalized.
but they also ask me, do you guys have broadband up there?
I had a woman,
And we have indoor toilets too.
But we have to figure out how to capitalize on the fact that we've got that initial entree.
Yep.
We're not following through.
Right.
I had a woman say to me, she says, "You're from Maine. What an authentic place to be from." It's okay. And I asked her if she had a business she'd like to move up there. You know?
We've got an authentic place we could put you, right? Okay. Well, what about some of the? But there are some negatives that go along with that too. Our business climate, our business stuff. Does that matter? That Forbes listing rating?
Sure.
And
It's something that can be overcome with a marketing effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like how?
Well, if all the press you see about Maine is bad, well, then you have no balance. But if you see some things that and to me, I'd say let's embrace who we are. We're not Costco. We're not Sam's. We're Nordstrom. Yeah, it costs a little more to live here, but it's worth it. And there are people that show up at Nordstrom, and they make a good living doing that.
And Maine's not for everyone.
Right.
No, exactly.
And we have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And market to who our segment is.
And to the credit of the LePage administration, which is new, I think they've hit that right on the head, which is they've acknowledged it exists. I mean, we've gone through the last 20 years of this state of making believe that perception or reality that of where we are on those lists didn't really matter. It does matter. And I think that simple acknowledgement, now we get to transfer that into different policy, different into relationships and development, that can be a very positive thing. But recognition is the first thing.
Right.
That didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, we do have so many built-in obstacles just by virtue of where we are, geography, and all those kinds of things, that anything that's in there, if one of those stories, you spend all your time kind of trying to undo that Forbes issue.
There's another point, and I know Matt's familiar with the work, but there was the Can-Am Connection study.
Right.
Your geography is your perception of who you are.
Right.
I mean,
I know.
we're
Peter
not
Vigutto
positioning
hammers me all the
ourselves
time
as
about
being
that. You're not looking at the
in a
map the
world
right way.
position.
Yeah.
We're not the end of the road. We just have to have a different set of partners.
I have to tell you a funny story. That when I went up to Holton the first time, and they invited me up, and the city fathers met me in the parking lot, and they said, "Well, we're thrilled that you're here, and let's sit down and talk about it." And I said, "It's great to be here. I've never been to the end of the turnpike." And they said, "It's the beginning." And I thought, you know what? That's really powerful. It is the beginning, and we need to think of ourselves that way. But I don't think that geography is as big a deal as people want to make it out to be. It really is not. The issues that I hear about are around cost and ease of doing business. It's not about.
And it's the reality of where we're going too. I'm seeing Canadian investment.
Yeah.
Why? Because we're south for them.
Yeah.
Right.
We're an entree to a new market.
the Florida of Quebec,
I don't
right?
have to tell them about snow and the fact that
Right.
we don't have work lost days just because we have
Well, that's
snow.
why the Boston markets, I think, is always effective too. I mean, they have winter.
Boston and
they
Montreal and
understand
New
us.
York.
When Boston Financial came up to the Mid-Coast, it's like, oh, that's right. Aren't you guys worried about? No, we want cheap labor and cheap
Same
space.
with Athena Health.
Yeah,
Same
we
with
want-
Athena Health.
We want places
Well,
to go.
what Mike said earlier about the three-ring binder being a great opportunity in the Bangor area, that's a great opportunity for Maine as a whole. Our group does work in Maine, but we also have projects in Hawaii, and we're doing that out of Portland, Maine. And there are other companies that work across the country. So one of the things we want to be careful about in our marketing is that to show that we're not parochial in terms of our interests, or that you're not moving to an Arctic research station when you moved here, that you can conduct your business via the electronic, digital age that we live in from Maine effectively across the world. And we have examples of that in the state that we should highlight.
But we don't highlight, and we don't use that in our marketing materials. It's like Bachman, who's right here in the Lewiston area, which is doing design engineering
Right.
for major activities, and it's all going out via the internet.
Well, Unum.
Yeah,
Great
same thing.
example.
Yep.
Or in Presque Isle, Maine Mutual Guarantee,
Sure.
it's an
Yeah.
insurance
Right.
company. They operate in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, soon Virginia.
So how do we pay for that marketing? There's a cost.
It's not a lot of money, though, relative to some of and it's about priorities. Do we need the same number of university campuses as does California? Do we need to have 25% of our population on public aid? I mean, it's guns or butter. It's that conversation. But it seems to me if we don't spend some time creating jobs and opportunity, we're going to have more people on welfare.
Is the marketing conversation a part of the mix in Augusta now? I mean, you guys would know. You talk to. Are they thinking about? Okay, good. If we save some of that guns,
I think we're just
save
trying
some
to
of that
find-
guns or butter or whichever.
Yeah, I think
are we going to put
there's some
to-
other issues that are probably more pressing, and probably rightly so.
It's hard.
But
It's
I
hard
think-
to invest in an environment like this.
But I think that, you talked about the fact that we're all familiar with each other and, we've known each other for years. I think it's almost incumbent upon us to come up with a simple strategy and help sell it. And it needs to be centrally led in my particular, view.
Yeah.
And others are contributors to that system, rather than having 10 marketing plans coming
No,
out
I agree
from 10
completely.
regions.
That makes sense.
You got to have
That's
one.
the worst thing that can happen to
I
us.
agree.
So.
And
There's
maybe it
gotta
will
be
come
one.
from that kind of coordination from y'all doing that. or at least driving the plan forward.
Right.
All right, we got to stop there. Otherwise, I'll have to edit too much. And I'm really bad at editing. So thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.